I'm Rob from Barefoot Gaming, and it's Oculus Rift S review time. Let's go! So many things to talk about. I'm going to start off by my initial impressions, and my initial impressions of this headset, honestly, were the Oculus store. Oh my goodness, it is so much better than anything else out there. The store itself, the interface, the way you can see your virtual desktop, you can choose which desktop you want to see and actually launch Steam from inside of the Oculus Home. It's really good, and I know that's just the software end of it, but it does need to be talked about. Oculus has a fantastic home. It's just great. Next up, I'm going to talk about the comfort of the headset itself. Now, they kind of went with like a mishmash. They went with like the Lenovo 4 headrest, but they also ran the Oculus Rift head strap on the top. And it's got the Titan band in the back that lets you give some relief as to how tight it is up against your face. It's okay. I would say it's better than the Vive factory release was. It's not as good as the deluxe audio strap, in my opinion. Next up, I'm going to talk about the gasket that sits around the face, because if we're talking comfort, I don't really like the kind of foam they use. It's fine for a short period of time, but I mean, I actually didn't check VR cover, and I probably should. It may not be out yet, but I don't love that foam gasket, and it's very similar to the Oculus Rift CV1. So if you already have that and you like it, great, it's not going to be an issue. I don't like it as much as the HTC Vive or the Valve Index. That gasket is not as comfortable to me. The headset, everything sits fine, but the gasket, not a big fan. The nose piece, now, the light bleed that you get in from the nose, or the gap that you can see, for myself, and again, this is going to be different for everybody because everybody has a different shaped head, everybody has a different shaped nose, but I had almost no light leakage. I almost couldn't see through, which is something I really like. Let's talk to controller comfort next. I don't love how it feels smaller in my hands. Maybe it's again an issue with my hand size, but it isn't as comfortable to me as the Oculus Rift CV1. I like the fact that the buttons are easily touched, like your A and B buttons, your joysticks, the home button, everything is where I like it to be. But the fact that they went smaller, and maybe this is just something I'll have to spend more time with, but my initial reaction after spending a couple of hours with it is I don't like it as much. Still works well, it's still a fully functional, well-built controller, but I kind of wish they would have stayed with the size of the CV1, personally, my take. And if I'm talking about the controller, I have to talk about the removable magnetic cover for the battery. Now, my first thought was, that is actually pretty darn cool. It snaps in and it holds in place really good and proper. You pop a AA, so it's not rechargeable. Whatever, that's fine. If you want to use rechargeable batteries, you can. What I didn't like about it is oftentimes in games, even using the wrist strap and holding onto it, again, I blame the size of the controller, but I could feel the battery cover sliding around in my hand, and I found that crazy annoying. It's not like I was worried about it falling apart. It wasn't going to. The magnet is going to hold it well enough, but it's almost, I was scared I was going to pinch my fingers, because it's frequently, I would feel, especially in games like Beat Saber or things where I'd be moving my hands around a lot, I could feel that cover move. Maybe I need to squeeze it harder, maybe that's my fault, but I take that as a negative towards the controller. And again, well built, and it's a really neat idea, but I think in practice, it's just okay. Something that's very important that I must talk about a little bit is the clarity on the headset. Now again, those of you looking for true black, you're not going to find it in LCD. I am fine with the black levels on these LCD screens. It's not ideal. In a perfect world, they would be deeper black, but I'm okay with it. I can suspend disbelief when I'm in VR for a very short period of time. It's fine. Blacks are fine. The screen door I'm going to talk about is reduced from the CV1, and if you don't know what the screen door is, again, really quick, it's the grid you see of all the individual pixels. You can, if you're looking for it, you can see it, but it is reduced from the CV1, and every time that's, brought down a little bit, that's great. As to God rays, I would say they are greatly reduced. In fact, they're not gone, but if you were to compare it to the Oculus Rift CV1, it's almost non-existent. They did a really good job eliminating like light bleed, where you have white text on a black background. It's not nearly as pronounced. So God rays, much, much better. Now, I already talked about this on the Index, but I'm going to talk about it again on the Rift S. The sweet spot, people talk about it in different ways. They talk about how clear it is when you just put it on, how much do you have to fiddle with it for everything to look clear, or how much can you look around with your eyes inside of the headset and have it retain clarity. Now, I would say the sweet spot as far as putting it on was pretty good. I didn't really have to fiddle with it very much. A little bit, but I would say, again, an improvement over the CV1. As far as looking around the screen itself, it's still okay. I liken it to wearing glasses, and if you don't wear glasses, you'll struggle to understand this, but for people that wear glasses, you tend to move your head to look at things. You don't move your eyes around because everything is clear directly in front of you. It's not clear everywhere in the glasses. And this is still just okay. It does not have edge-to-edge clarity. It's all right. You still mostly want to keep your eyes looking straight forward ahead and turn with your head, which you're already used to doing with your Oculus Rift or with your HTC Vive. So if I'm talking about all the headset clarity, I have to talk about the refresh rate. Now, those of you that are unfamiliar, the Rift CV1 was at 90, the Rift S is at 80. If you look at a Gear VR, I think it was at 60. For me, this was something that was noticeable. Now, I spent over an hour in a single session and I exited VR feeling not nauseous. I mean, I have spent a lot of time in VR, but I felt off, and I haven't felt that since I first strapped the headset on. And I played with it back and forth, and it's when I'm tracking my head, when I'm moving my head left and right, even if my eyes aren't perceiving it easily, I know for a fact it is affecting me. I don't like that I noticed it. I wish I hadn't. But maybe it was less to do with my refresh. Maybe it was a mix of my refresh and my interpupillary distance matching up with their software rendering, which again, if you're unfamiliar with it, Oculus Rift on the CV1 had a physical slider that let you adjust the two different lenses to line up with your pupils. Here, because it's one screen, they couldn't do it. I don't know what the mix is, but I know after an hour, I felt more tired than in any of my other sets except Windows Mixed Reality. I get that same feeling from Windows Mixed Reality sets. So take that with a grain of salt. Maybe it won't affect you at all, but it affects me. Would it be enough to stop me from playing VR? Absolutely not. But in a comparison, I found it noticeable and I wish I hadn't. The build quality on the headset and the controllers is great. I think everything feels professional, it feels well made. Even that minor quibble I had with the magnetic cover is exactly that. It is a minor complaint. It's something that maybe a lot of you won't notice. Again, I only noticed it in high action games. So I have to put a disclaimer out here on this next point because I feel I did a disservice to you in reviewing these headsets in the wrong order. For example, every time I went from my HTC Vive to my Oculus Rift, I was running a thinner gasket, the 6mm cover from VR Covers, and it felt more goggle-ish every time I put on my Rift compared to my Vive. It was minor, but it was there. Unfortunately, I've been spending a lot of time in my index, and as soon as I put on the Rift S, it felt like super goggles again, and it really took me out of it. So I'm like, okay, well maybe it's not the Rift S's fault, and it isn't. If you go back and forth between the CV1, the Oculus Rift CV1 and the Oculus Rift S, they are very similar. Let's talk about tracking. Now, the headset tracking was perfect as I thought it would, or very close to perfect. The controllers themselves, I updated the firmware, I did a bunch of reading, and Oculus has done some fixes on that, and I really pushed them to the test. I played a lot of games where I had to hold my hands close to my face, and in some games that worked well, in other games it was mediocre. So in a game that I thought it was going to struggle with, In Death, a game that I absolutely love, the calibration was off a little bit. I'd have to get used to how I hold my hands, because I'm a dead shot when I'm playing on the Vive or on the Index, but it would take a little bit of adapting. However, it didn't ever lose my hands. I could hold my hand up against my jaw or right to my ear or right underneath my chin, and everything was fine. Tracking was good. There is a little bit of jitter if you're looking for it, and that's just going to be the nature of it. It does a much better job than I thought. The only time I really lost tracking enough that I found it annoying is when I played some Thrill of the Fight. There were a couple times where even though I was holding my hand kind of just to the right of my headset, it was enough that it moved off and I had to move my hand back in, which sucks when I was trying to block. When I was playing games like Onward, again, you kind of have to just move your hands forward just a little bit. How much of a slight that will be for you is totally going to be personal. It might be something that's not an issue at all. It might be something that is an issue, just know it going in. Honestly, The hand tracking is light years ahead of where Windows Mixed Reality hand tracking is, but it's not Lighthouse tracking. It's not. And I wish they had given the option that you could still use the Oculus sensors if you wanted to, but it is what it is. Let's talk about the audio. I'm not a fan of that channeled audio. If the room is perfectly quiet, it does a pretty good job on games that aren't music based or don't have piles of atmosphere happening around you. If you're just looking for audio itself, it's actually pretty impressive that it can do what it does. But it's audible to other people that are nearby, so know that, which you're gonna have the exact same issue if you run an index because it sits off your head. But it doesn't sound rich. You play Beat Saber in this and it's just, yeah, you can turn your volume all the way up and it's just mediocre. But there's nothing stopping you from putting on a regular headset. It just feels like that's a takeaway because they already had really good headphones on the Rift CV1. But there are headphones that you can buy that you can attach to the strap and snap them down. It's a slightly extra cost, but I would recommend it. I don't love the headphones that are built in. Is this a good valued headset? Absolutely, no questions asked. It's well built, the image quality is good, there's a lot of good things going for it, and yes, there are negatives going for it as well, but not everybody is in a place where they can afford to spend so much more to improve those things that I have issues with. Some of them may not be issues for you at all. Again, like slight jitter, not a big deal for a lot of people. The fact that you could lose tracking every once in a while, only in certain games, won't be a big deal. If you're not into games like Onward, it's not going to matter. Or even if you are, if you don't mind adjusting your hands a little bit, it's not going to matter. I do not like people sitting in one camp or the other. All pro Vive, all pro Index, all pro Oculus. You know what? We are all one big family and we are helping grow the community. If this is the set that's right for you, hopefully I've given you what you need to know to make your mind up yourself. If you have any questions on anything I didn't touch on, and I have been rambling, so I'm sure there is, leave the questions down below. I will do my best to get to you. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more of our reviews. Like, comment. I love hearing from you. I will talk to you again real soon. See ya.